It started as a quick trip to Target for toothpaste and snacks after work. I was tired and not paying much attention, just wandering the aisles. But then I noticed him, a man in a black hoodie lingering a few feet behind me. At first, I thought he was just shopping like me, but every time I moved to a new aisle, he followed. When I stopped to look at something, he stopped too, pretending to browse. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Target isn't exactly empty at 8 p.m. after all. But then I started testing it. I walked in a random zigzag across the store, from cleaning supplies to electronics, and he mirrored every move. My chest tightened. I headed toward the women's clothing section, figuring it was less likely for him to follow. But he did. I turned a corner and ducked down to tie my shoe, hoping to lose him. When I peeked up, he was standing at the end of the aisle, staring at me. That's when I decided to leave. I abandoned my basket and headed for the exit. As I reached the sliding doors, I glanced back, and he was walking toward me, faster now. I made it to my car and locked the doors, my heart pounding. Just as I started the engine, I saw him in the rearview mirror, standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching me. I drove straight home, but the paranoia stayed. When I got to my apartment, I double-checked the locks and sat by the window for a while, watching for anything unusual. 2 days later, I found a note taped to my car window. "You forgot the toothpaste." I love Target runs. They're my happy place. So when I noticed a man pushing an empty cart around the store, I didn't think much of it at first. I was browsing the home decor section when I noticed him again, standing at the end of the aisle. His cart was still empty, and he wasn't looking at any of the items. He was looking at me. It gave me the creeps, but I tried to ignore him. I moved to another part of the store, but as I browsed the makeup section, there he was again. At this point, I decided I'd had enough. I cut through the kids' toys aisle to lose him and headed for the self-checkout lanes. When I looked over my shoulder, he was there again, standing near the customer service desk, still pushing that empty cart. I paid as quickly as I could and headed to my car. The parking lot was mostly empty, and I felt exposed under the bright lights. As I loaded my bags, I glanced up and saw him standing by the store entrance, staring at me. I got in my car and locked the doors, but as I pulled out of my parking spot, I noticed headlights turning on a few rows behind me. The car followed me all the way home. Every time I turned, it turned. I tried to lose it by taking random streets, but it stayed on me until I pulled into my apartment complex. I parked, my heart racing, and watched the car drive past slowly. The driver's face was hidden in the shadows, but I knew it was him. The next morning, I found a red Target cart left in front of my apartment door. It was completely empty. I went to Target one evening to grab a new outfit for an event that weekend. The store was quiet, with only a few shoppers wandering the aisles. As I picked out a few items to try on, I noticed a man hovering near the dressing rooms. He didn't have a cart or any clothes, and he wasn't browsing. He was just standing there, looking around. I thought it was weird, but I figured he might be waiting for someone. I went into the dressing room and started trying on clothes. After a minute or two, I heard footsteps outside my door. Then I saw a shadow under the stall. It stopped right in front of my door. "Occupied," I said loudly, hoping whoever it was would go away. The shadow didn't move. "Hello?" I said again, louder this time. Still nothing. I peeked under the door and saw a pair of men's boots. My stomach dropped. I quickly got dressed and opened the door, but no one was there. The hallway outside the dressing rooms was empty. I told the attendant what happened, and she looked confused. "No one else has gone in," she said. I brushed it off as paranoia and finished shopping, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When I got to the parking lot, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned around and saw him, the man from the dressing room, standing by a car a few rows away, staring at me. I got into my car and locked the doors. As I started the engine, he began walking toward me. I backed out of my spot as quickly as I could and sped out of the lot. Later that night, I went to hang up the clothes I bought. That's when I noticed something in the bag that wasn't mine, a crumpled piece of paper. Scrawled on it were the words, "I know your size." It was a quiet Tuesday evening, and I decided to stop by Target to grab some essentials. The store wasn't crowded. just a handful of shoppers scattered throughout the aisles. I was browsing the toy section, looking for a birthday gift for my niece, when I noticed a man standing at the end of the aisle. He wasn't shopping, he was just standing there, staring. I felt a little uneasy but brushed it off. People are weird sometimes, right? I moved to another aisle, but a few minutes later, he appeared again. This time, he was closer, still pretending to look at something on the shelves. I started walking away, my heart beating a little faster. Every time I turned a corner, I could hear faint footsteps behind me. I decided to test it. I walked in a circle through the store, going from home decor to groceries to electronics. And there he was, always a few steps behind, trying to look casual but failing miserably. I stopped in the seasonal aisle, pretending to browse, and glanced over my shoulder. He was there watching me. I made a beeline for the self-checkout, tossing my things on the counter as quickly as possible. As I scanned my items, I felt someone standing too close behind me. I turned, and there he was, empty-handed. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice shaking. He just smiled, a wide, unsettling grin, and walked away. I rushed out to the parking lot, clutching my bags. As I reached my car, I heard footsteps again. I turned to see him walking toward me, his hands in his pockets. I scrambled into my car and locked the doors, my heart pounding. But as I started the engine, I noticed something in the passenger seat, a small toy I hadn't bought. On the packaging was a sticky note, "For your niece, see you soon." Working the closing shift at Target always gave me the creeps, but I never let it bother me. The quiet, the stillness, the echoing footsteps, most nights it was peaceful. Tonight, though, something felt off from the start. I was assigned to tidy the back of the store, mostly the home goods section. It was past 9:30, and the last few customers had already trickled out. The store's closing announcement had played, and the front doors were locked. It was just me, the manager, and two others finishing up in their respective areas. As I folded the last of the throw blankets, I heard something, soft footsteps. "Hello?" I called out, expecting to see one of my coworkers. No response. I shrugged it off. Sounds carried weirdly when the store was this empty. I moved on to fluffing some pillows when I heard it again, this time closer. "Jason, is that you?" I asked, naming one of the guys from electronics. Silence. The footsteps seemed to circle behind me, so I turned quickly, my heart racing. There was no one there. I tried to laugh at myself. "Get it together," I muttered. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I moved to another aisle to straighten the shelves. That's when I noticed something strange, an item sitting out of place. A single red Target employee vest was draped over a chair in the home office display. It wasn't mine, and I hadn't seen anyone take theirs off. I picked it up, feeling an inexplicable chill. As I did, I noticed something scrawled on the tag in black marker. "Run." My stomach tightened, but I told myself it was a prank. Someone was trying to mess with me. I threw the vest onto a nearby cart and grabbed my walkie. "Hey, does anyone know why there's an extra vest in home goods?" Static crackled, then my manager's voice came through. "What are you talking about? Everyone's accounted for." I opened my mouth to respond, but stopped when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, a shadow slipping between the aisles. "Someone's here," I whispered into the walkie, my voice barely steady. "Who?" my manager replied. "I don't know," I said, backing away slowly. "I saw someone." The lights flickered suddenly, plunging the aisle into momentary darkness. When they came back on, my walkie let out a high-pitched screech, then cut to silence. "Hello!" I shouted into it, but there was no response. Panic set in. I started walking quickly toward the front of the store. My footsteps echoed loudly, and I kept looking over my shoulder. That's when I heard it again, footsteps, heavier this time, matching my pace. I broke into a jog, gripping the walkie in one hand, my phone in the other. I didn't care if I looked ridiculous. As I reached the main aisle leading to the registers, I saw something, or someone, standing at the far end of the store. It was a man. He was tall, dressed in all black, his head slightly tilted as if he were watching me. "Hey, you're not supposed to be here," I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. He didn't respond. Instead, he stepped forward just one deliberate step and stopped. I backed away slowly, fumbling to dial my manager's number on my phone. The line rang and rang, but went to voicemail. "Please," I whispered to myself, "let this be a joke." The man started walking toward me, not running, just walking. I turned and bolted toward the stockroom. My shoes squeaked against the floor as I ducked through the employee-only door, slamming it behind me. The stockroom was dimly lit, rows of shelves casting long shadows. I crouched behind a pallet of boxes, trying to catch my breath. The door creaked open. I covered my mouth to muffle my breathing. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed through the stockroom. They stopped, then started again, as if he were searching for me. A voice broke the silence. "You left your vest behind," the man said, his tone low and mocking. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. Then I heard the sound of fabric being dragged across the floor. I peeked around the corner and saw him. He was holding the red vest I'd found, dragging it along the concrete as he walked. I couldn't stay hidden forever. When he turned down another aisle, I made a break for the emergency exit. The alarm blared as I pushed through the door and into the cold night air. I ran to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. When I finally got in and locked the doors, I looked back at the store. The man was standing just outside the emergency exit, the vest dangling from his hand. He lifted it slowly, holding it up like a trophy, then let it drop to the ground. The police arrived 10 minutes later, but the man was gone. I quit the next day. Sometimes, when I drive past that Target at night, I swear I see someone standing in the window, holding a red vest. But when I look again, there's nothing there. I went to Target one evening to shop for new clothes. It had been a long week, and a little retail therapy was just what I needed. I grabbed a few outfits and headed to the fitting room. The attendant smiled and handed me a tag, and I went into one of the stalls. As I was trying on the first dress, I heard someone enter the fitting room. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed in the small space. I peeked through the gap in the door and saw a man standing by the fitting room mirrors. He wasn't trying on clothes. He was just standing there, staring at the stalls. My pulse quickened, but I stayed silent, hoping he'd leave. Instead, he started pacing, his boots thudding against the floor. I quickly got dressed and opened the door. He turned to look at me, his face blank and emotionless. "Excuse me," I mumbled, trying to squeeze past him. He didn't move. "Nice choice," he said, his voice low and gravelly. I bolted out of the fitting room and headed for the checkout. My hands were shaking as I paid for my things. As I walked to the parking lot, I glanced over my shoulder. He was following me, a few steps behind. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as I could. But the nightmare wasn't over. When I got home, I unpacked my bag and found a small folded piece of paper tucked into the pocket of the dress I'd tried on. Scrawled in messy handwriting were the words, "You looked beautiful in this. I'll find you again."